All right. I guess we'll start the lecture now. So, as someone already mentioned, this is going to be Game 6 from Invincible. Shusaku playing against Ota Yuzo again. This is the first game that we have remaining of Shusaku that is a non-handicap game. And so this was just after the handicap changed. I think the way it worked back then was that when you were at a 3-dan difference, you alternated between taking black and taking 2 stones if you were the weaker player. So Shusaku opens on black, keeping in mind there's no komi for white, and he displays the 3-4, totally standard. White, on the other hand, plays a bit more unusually. He plays the 5-4, which isn't so great for territory, but it could be good for fighting. Could also be good for influence. At this point, Black makes a pretty interesting move. He knows that he's going to get one of the 2 remaining open corners anyways, so he just plays really solid here and encloses the corner. White continues to play sort of interesting moves in the corner. Um, the 5-3 again isn't so great when it comes to territory. For example, if Black just approaches at B later, what Mr. Yang, my teacher, says is that in terms of territory, um, B is like 60% or 55%, and then A is like 40 or 45%, because it's more in the corner. Uh, on the other hand, A does sort of look to reduce what potential Black may have on the right side. And Black sort of decides to play along, and he plays the same sort of move. Again, there's a good reason for it. This 5-4 stone, the most pronounced thing about it is that it's exerting extra influence towards the left side, right? If you just count, it's 5 lines high, and there's more influence towards the left side than would be usual. White approaches black stone. This is a Joseki approach. It's more usual, however, to approach here. And now this is the same position as if white had played a 3-4 and black, responded and then white ignored, which is fine. That's a more territorial way, but white has a bunch of high stones, fifth line, and he's going to make this one high again. The only thing is that sort of gives the corner away. White responds, black walks ahead. And now how far do we extend with these 2 stones? J3, good. Hey, Honeyboo. I'm going to try and not make any mistakes today, but I'm sure if I do, you'll catch me on them. Maybe we'll even get a clean tree today. Let's see. Yeah, so 2 stones extend 3 spaces, right? This is probably really basic for everyone, but when you have 1 stone, 2 spaces is normal. With 2 stones, it's normal to extend 3 spaces because there's a bit of extra strength there. And this is the sort of the old Joseki. More modern is for black to press here. White, of course, has to extend there and play at the tiger's mouth vital point. And now he's aiming at an attachment around A, right? So black will play nice and solid here. And then white can play something on this side. So the professional commentator for this game was Naoki Miyamoto, 9-dan professional. He actually showed it here. I'm a little more used to seeing 3 spaces. This one's kind of an exception to the normal rule, right? When we have 3 stones, we would expect to jump 4 or 4 here. The problem with that is A is kind of a vital point for both sides. And so when black plays here, white's going to want to respond anyway. And so it makes this feel a little bit slow. So that would be the more modern Joseki, but they played, the old way. And then black goes ahead and does the same thing. So this is kind of interesting. We get a mirrored position on the bottom. They both have exactly the same shape. So what's the biggest now at this point? Everything's settled on bottom. Top left. Hey there, Heija. Top left, D17. Yep, so white's just going to enclose the corner. So that's good. And now we've got, the top, the right, and the left. Black decides to take the extension that works good with his Shamari. White does the same thing. He takes the nice extension with his Shamari. So everything's pretty peaceful so far. And at this point, clearly the left is the biggest, right? It's the widest area, and black doesn't want white to get a double wing over there. He actually plays at C11, which is kind of interesting. One theme we've had going in a lot of these games is, the 5 spaces. So that's pretty good. The other thing to notice here, Commune, is that white is not super anxious to play a move like A. It's only a 1 space extension. So a move like C11 is actually part of what black is trying to do here is not leave a good move for his opponent. And that's a really important principle. Sometimes you can play a move that's not perfect for your own position as long as it doesn't leave an ideal move for your opponent. So A was essential to not let white get the double wing. And in the same way, this point at B is very important. If black gets to play at that spot, it's a pretty nice position for black. So white tries to press it low. So what are we going to do in this case? How do we answer? C6, D5. So those are the 2 choices, right? C6 and D5. So black pushes and cuts because he wants to use this stone, right? He wants to try and get more on the left side. C6 is actually possible. Miyamoto actually said that this would show a sad lack of fighting spirit on black's part. So let's see what would happen. The problem is that it's pretty low. We can imagine a result like this, where black is really low. The only reason this is considerable for black is because A is too close to the wall. So black is too low, but J3 isn't ideal with the wall. So for that reason, it could be possible, but still Miyamoto felt that it would show a sad lack of fighting spirit. Okay, so how do we handle this situation? White to play. This type of shape comes up a lot, so and there's kind of like a standard sequence, so it's pretty useful. E7, D7, Donatari. That's a very good comment by Ruckus there. Any other choices? There's a fancy move here. Probably someone that reads a lot of Go books will know the fancy move here. Okay, looks like you guys don't know it. Oh, Rafa's got it. D8. Yeah. D8 is actually the only move here. Um, so let's take a look at why. First, let's cover this E7 move. As Ruckus said, Atari is generally a bad idea. So let's see why that is. We force black to extend. So black got stronger. While black is getting stronger, the A stones are getting weaker, and we're still left with a cut that we have to fix somehow. So that's a problem. For instance, if white just extends, which in this case is actually a mistake as well, but it's better. Um, Black can extend, and now you see these white stones don't have a cut in them. So this is much better. Atari normally just gives yourself a problem. It's a normal bad habit for Q players though. So that's one thing that you can really improve upon is not leaving the weaknesses. Just let black help himself. Don't help black. Okay, so the problem with D7 is that white doesn't have a clear move next. For example, if white wants to keep pressure on black's two stones, he has to make like an empty triangle. If he jumps down to B, it's not taking liberties. Yeah, so let's take a look at this move. I'm hoping that everyone can learn this move from this game. So it's similar. Black still needs to play here, which he does. But now white can play here, and A is much better than B. You guys see that? So this is the normal sort of shape in this kind of fight. And what you're probably wondering is, well, what about this, right? So what's white's answer to this move? Yeah, this move is not good for black, but we need to know how to answer it. Right, the counter Atari. C6, F6. Good. VRN Bugatti got it exactly. Um, so black's going to want to cut here. The problem is he has to respond to this Atari. White's going to come out. Black has to help this stone. And then white can separate here. And you can see black's got two weak groups. A is particularly in a strange location. So black cannot do that. That's why black just helps his stones. And white gets to play here. Very nice. So now we've got a fight against these two stones, right? Both are, losing liberties, and it's important for white to Hane there to keep himself strong and to keep white stones weak. Okay, what's the next one? The next move for white? B7, E2. That's right. So you've seen this game before. Bugatti B6 or B7 is actually the standard move. This is the first time in the game we're seeing that white is trying to get something extra. He's trying to do a little better than normal, and that makes sense, playing as white with no Komi. So let's take a look at the normal. Normal is to just Hane. Black will connect. Now white has to handle his group, and the best way to do that is to shoulder hit against this A stone. So this would be standard. This is what we could normally expect. These 3 stones are somewhat weak though, right? Because black's got B. It's also undercut by C. The 5-4 and 5-3 opening moves were not extra. What is that? Oh, no. I see what you mean. Yeah, that type of thing, a stronger player can use to make the situation non-standard, which may help him get, an advantage somehow. But you can't say they're extra, right? They're not. White's not getting more than he would if he had played normally. Um, so let's try and figure out what White's idea is behind this move. Um, let me click Black's move first, which is actually just a wonderful move. This is one of the really beautiful moves from this game. But however, let's say locally white is aiming at this cut, right? Black has no answer to this cut. If he Ataris from here, there's no continuation. And if he Ataris from there, he's giving up the 2 stones. So that's the idea, is white's trying to put extra pressure on this corner. So let's see, what's another possibility? Let's say black just defends that weakness. Now white will instantly go back to the standard, and A, B will be a really good exchange for white. So that's what white is trying to get extra, right? He thinks this would be better than this because he could get that stone at D. So black doesn't want to allow that to happen. And he comes up with this really, really cool move. And it makes sense, right? So let's go back to here. Black played a Hane against white's weak stones, and it's normal for white to respond. White didn't, so black attacks the stones that white didn't help. Very basic idea and important. And so Miyamoto he really, really liked this move. I think he even made a comment that he would not find this move. Yeah, C8 is the move that he said is the only easy move to find here, right? This is like the bamboo stealing Tesuji, but he thinks this is even better. He said, once you see this move, it's the only move, that sort of thing, but it's not that easy to find. So let me click white's move first, and then we'll look at the different variations here. First of all, what if black just follows up, or white just follows up on his threat? White can cut there, but black's going to continue over here. And yes, there is a ladder, and this is probably the one Ruckus is talking about. It doesn't really matter how hard white tries here. That's a ladder, and this ladder works for black. So that's no good. So white doesn't have time to push in there. What if white tries to come out? Black will use this same move. And now in this case, it's not a ladder anymore because white has that extra stone. But clearly white has been squeezed into an ugly shape. And this does not kill the 2 stones, black can come out and fight like this. And the other thing to notice is that A no longer works, which was, the whole point of the B move to begin with. So that's not really good for white. Some of you might be wondering, what if he keeps going in this case? In this case, black will change his mind, change directions. And that A group is not alive, so that's why white can't do that. So let's look at one more possibility. Maybe white can try to get out like this. Black will push, white needs to come out, and again we see really, really painful shape. A is still not protected for black, but Miyamoto said something like, the B stones are so heavy that white doesn't have time to play at A, he might as well just surrender. So taking all of those variations into account, white decided that there's no way for him to actually break out, and he just needs to play locally here. So where for black now? And I'll give you choices. A or B? B. I think A is too soon. So B seems really normal, right? What Miyamoto said is that black has to play here, or else his A move will be a waste. So let's take a look at why. Assuming black connects, now white can play here. This move doesn't work anymore because white has made some exchange, right? Black is split, white is out. This move doesn't work anymore. So black could play here, but this is a working ladder for white. So for black to really make use of his, brilliant move at d9, he has to follow that up and make this idea. Now white, of course, is going to capture that stone. Black has to live in the corner, and white still needs to live. So he makes this exchange, and so that fight is pretty much over for now. There's still Aji on white's A group, but white broke through on the left. Black got thickness. He's also still got some cuts and stuff to worry about as well. And we're going to see that pretty soon. White plays a very important point here. This has to do with the Aji at A. It also has to do with Aji on white's weak group. At the same time, it's helping white's weak C group and may be able to attack black's 3 stones in the lower right later. So this is a nice calm move. And now we see something really interesting. Black actually makes the choice to stake this entire game on the center, which is normally not something that would be advisable, right? But we can see how Shusaku goes about doing it. He's got this influence, and he decides to shoulder hit the low stone at K17 in order to build up additional influence. This is a contact, so white's going to respond. Black walks ahead, and white connects up on top. This is like a middle game Joseki, you can think of it as. Very common. Black plays a forcing move here. Wants to see how white's going to answer. And white plays here, which is important. If he plays here, which may look safer, he actually has to worry about A later. So this is the correct move. And so we've got, this influence, and this influence, how do we follow that up and join those together? There's a particular move that is good to keep the influence going. E14, right. He's going to shoulder hit again. Again, that's a contact. So white responds. Black has to walk ahead. And white shows his patience. You know, he plays here. This move has a big follow-up at A, which we're going to see soon. It's also big for white's corner. On the other hand, black gets to play here, which is really big as well. So one of the diagrams in the book, you know, questioned this move. And I have to be honest, this is a little hard for me to understand. But what Miyamoto said is that if black plays here at A, then he's got the slide at B later. He's also got the shoulder hit at C. And so his judgment is that white stones aren't going to get much on top. And he feels like this is actually the correct move. And that's really hard for me to see. But that was, you know, his judgment and also white's judgment in the game. He doesn't seem to be too concerned with the center. Now we get to see some of their reading, because this is actually Sente against this group on the left, believe it or not. So suddenly white plays here, which may seem strange, but it's backed up by a lot of reading. So let's take a look at that. I guess I'll show it from here first. If black plays here and here, white has only one eye, so the only place to go now is out. The problem is these stones aren't that easy to escape. So for example, if black plays here, white will surround, and this actually captures these stones. If you're really interested in it, I would suggest this as like a homework problem. Go figure this out. Black actually dies here. And this doesn't quite work, right? Because the three stones are too short of liberties, so white can push through. But however, in the game, black has an A stone, right? So now it's different. If we go through that, you know, same sequence, black just comes out. So that's not going to work for white. Waiting a sec. What if white doesn't D7? Yeah, so that's the next thing. White can play here. And what that means is that black captures one stone in Sente, which is very painful. And additionally, there may be, you know, A may be Sente again later. So white can definitely still live, but it's just a bit painful. So that's why white does this. And it turns out to be Sente because black has to defend here. If black doesn't defend, white can play like this. Again, A doesn't work, so black would have to play at B. And white can try to use this group to just destroy the Moyo. So black defends and keeps that nice and strong. So let's see what comes next. White's gonna deal with this influence, you know, move by move, one step at a time. Black has no choice but to answer here, but this is pretty nice for white because it means later on white can play A, black will answer at B, then white can play at C, and he's going to pick up one stone. So he's already, you know, He's got that essentially waiting for him later. Yeah, that would take the whole side. Now he plays here, which again might look like a slow move, but it builds white up. It's removing the shoulder hit at D. It's also preparing to attach at the triangled location. K15. Yeah, something around there, right? Black actually plays here, and this was Miyamoto's favorite move of the game. He thinks this really showed Shusaku's genius. Um, Again, white is threatening to attach and do this sort of thing. So the normal response here, straightforward move, would just be to block that. However, what Shusaku's idea is, well, let me click white's move first. His idea is that if um, white comes out this way, he can be flexible and turn here and, base his Moyo more off the right side of the board than the left side. And also, as he's turning here, he can actually look to wedge later to cut, rather than playing Hane at D and letting white come in. So that was his idea. And white responded properly. Yeah, so would G13 be a good move? G13 for white right now? Hmm. It could be. It looks like there's still some wedging Aji. So something like E might be stronger to get rid of one of the cuts after the wedge, right? But it's hard to say. I'm not exactly sure how this would go. This is as far as Miyamoto showed the diagram. So this move looks a little strange, right? But this is actually proper. Um, so let's see why that is. If white pushes, all he's doing is helping black, and there's no more attachment at A because black will just wedge at B. Um, and that leaves two cuts, right? So white is just going to be cut. So this is a really important idea, that white is going to put pressure on these stones, but he's not going to help them. And that's the meaning of this Kosumi here. So black actually has to fix that up. And white makes an exchange down here, which is actually quite big. He wants to see how black's going to deal with this group. And this group isn't really contributing to black's territory. He just wants it to be strong. So he plays nice and solid there. And white plays sort of a waiting move. He's saying, you know, I don't really think you can take that A area anyway, so I don't need to jump in right away. I can just approach first. And black plays pretty much an all-out move. Um, the normal move would be something like this along the side. But now white can press in here, and there's not really a Moyo. White's actually ahead in territory, um, and it would be hard for black to win in this case because the Moyo's not big enough. That's the judgment here. So that's why black's trying to get more. He's also, this move's kind of nice because it has two good follow-ups. Black is looking to play A to raise the right side, or, play B, finish that idea and make the center bigger. And now white can't wait anymore. He actually comes right in. And you'll probably be surprised about how easily white lives here. Black's got to help his weak stone and put pressure on white's weak stone. White attaches to get, the forcing moves. Black plays really solidly here because he wants to give as least, the fewest number of forcing moves as possible. Um, if black plays some sort of Hane, then white can play a counter Hane or a cross attach, that sort of thing, or not cross attach, cross cut, and can get extra forcing moves. R14, wow, that's pretty crazy. So you want to clamp? That's definitely not something I considered. But what I would say is that it's ignoring the C stone, right? So actually, let's look at a few moves here, and then we'll go back and see what we can find there. Um, Black plays solidly for now. White gets some forcing moves and plays here, and white is essentially alive at this point. Black Hanes, and white lives now. So A is going to be Sente. When black plays A, white's going to have to respond at B. If black tries to attack like this, white can just respond, and he's threatening to play A next anyway, so that doesn't really help. So Miyamoto's commentary here was that it might look like black just let white come in and live so easily, but actually there's nothing else that he could do. So let's take a look at the crazy move. In general, when you clamp, you should be clamping from, you would like A to be stronger, right? Before you're going to play a move like this. So let's see. Q15, you think? Okay, so, and then if black tries to connect, this move becomes hard to answer, right? Because if we block directly, then we just get this whole thing. If we back off, still two cuts. So which way should we cut first here? Maybe here? Right? I mean, there is a lot of Aji. There's also a ton of variations, though, so not really sure, right? It's hard to say. I'm going to let Ruckus do that for homework and report back to me. He actually beat me in an even game recently, so I'm sure he can figure it out. The idea of it, I hope it's understandable why the idea of it. It's a bit of a crazy move. Okay, so let's see. White lived, and now, yeah, black needs to make the center work because he's behind on territory unless he makes the center big enough. And the way he does it is really interesting, right? He's not going to just play Gote moves to try to build the center. The only way to build the center naturally is to put pressure on some weak group. So he actually follows up his probe from a long time ago. That would be interesting. Okay, so he cuts, and there's an Aji stone here. He's also threatening to cut off A, right? Yeah, G3 has a ton of Aji. We're going to see later how much black really gets to use that. Right now, what white wants to do is fix, this weakness between the A stone. And he wants to try and do that in Sente by contacting here. And black actually responds with an interesting move. He jumps instead of playing, the normal solid response. And this jump means that black is prepared to play a ko. Let me show that. First, click white's move. We're 83 moves in and no broken tree yet. So the ko would be this ko, right? And this is not something that's easy for me to see either. Um, in fact, I think this game is quite difficult. There's a lot of stuff I don't, understand completely. Um, but the judgment here was that white can't really play this ko, can't afford to play that ko. Um, right, right. Needs a move at P8. Yeah, we're gonna see that area soon. White plays a forcing move here, asking black how he's gonna defend this group. Um, because obviously if he's gonna let white capture these two stones, that's gonna change the situation on the bottom. So he gets that in, and now he has to fix here, but that's quite a pleasant exchange for black, right? So this A move was pretty interesting. It's quite a nice exchange. Unfortunately, white gets, the move that Ruckus wants for black. White has to play here, right? The center is getting quite big. Black extends this stone though to create more Aji. And if you take a look at these stones right now, they have 4 liberties, and the B stones have 5, so they're okay for now. What white does is he gets more space on the right side. And let's see. Now black tries to keep white from coming in from this direction, right? So white's going to come in from the other direction. White's trying to keep this as small as he can. Black uses his forcing move at this point. And then he plays a turn here, which is really difficult. Miyamoto said that if you can find the right move here for white, your reading is at professional level. I mean, that's assuming you don't just pick the move randomly, right? Um, Anyone have any guesses? Well, I'm going to show you before you figure it out because we can't sit here all day. H1, H1, G1, or F2. Yeah, so Ota Yuzo is pretty strong. So he got the only move to live, which is here. Might look a little bit strange. Let's look at some of the other variations in this area. Miyamoto actually does like 5 times as much commentary and diagrams and stuff as any of the other um, reviewers. So it's actually it's a lot more work to prepare and stuff, but it's also generally more interesting. And so one of the things he asked is, what about this move? This one might look good too. But actually doesn't work. White can disconnect here. And when black tries to reduce the liberties, this move turns out to be quite nice for white. And essentially, as you can see here, white can just squeeze these stones, right? Granted, black is getting a whole lot of forcing moves on the outside, that's his main goal anyway. But that one wouldn't kill either. And so this is the only move to live. Let's look at some different choices. If white plays here, this looks all right. If black plays here, white can play this same sort of good move. And can live. Again, everything on the outside is sente, which is black's real goal. Um, but actually, Miyamoto said that this black's not going to be this kind. He actually has a better move. He can play here and here, and he can turn this into like a two-step ko, and white doesn't want that. And so the only way to avoid all the trouble is apparently this move, which white plays. Okay, so let's see. Black is not done attacking this white group yet. He's going to get more forcing moves, but he probes here first. White actually has no choice here. It might look like there's, A, B, but at this moment, white actually has to respond solidly on the side. So where is black's follow-up move if white connects here? R7, close, and sometimes that's good. There's better though, in general. It's very close though. Q6, no. O8, no. We want to somehow cut these three stones off. S6, there you go. S6. And this is actually a good opportunity to go over a nice principle that can help you in essentially every game. A lot of you probably know who Catalin Tiranu is. He was a Romanian guy that became Japanese 5-dan professional. And he's got this, what he calls the 1-2-3 principle, right? 1-2-3 principle, and this is an application of it. So Ruckus's first idea was let's separate these stones, which is a good idea. So 1, 2, 3. Let's see, where's my numbers? 1, 2, 3, right? And the principle generally, what it says is that if you calculate 1, 2, 3, you should just a lot of times just play 3. Just skip to 3 without making the 1-2 exchange. And this is a really good way for finding tessages actually. It applies in a lot of cases. So the idea is that black can just play 3 to begin with, right? And then, if, for example, if white plays the move that was number 2, black doesn't have to play number 1 or doesn't have to play 1 anymore, right? He could play something else instead. So that's the idea. That exchange might not be necessary. So just play the main move. And white actually doesn't have any answer to this. There's nothing white can do here, and that's why he couldn't play A. So for example, if white pushes here, that's obviously not going to work. If white pushes here, again, that's not going to work. So there's no answer to S6, which is why white has to play here. Okay, I've made it 100 moves. We still have the tree going. This is extra pressure. So now black makes a forcing move here. This is also kind of a probe. White has to respond solidly because he doesn't, there's no way he wants to give black this for free, right? That's enormous. So he can't leave that peep. Excuse me. So he has to answer there. And now black's going to try and start sealing this off. So it's hard for white to come in from this direction anymore, right? Because A and B are a sort of miai. So he's going to continue trying to come in from the other side. You get sente, sente. He's pushing in as much as he can. Um, and now black goes and starts using his forcing moves here. Um, and these are the follow-up moves that F1 allows white to play. Black gets all sorts of forcing moves here. White Hanes. Black gets yet another forcing move. And now there's some cool reading stuff again. The obvious move looks like it should be around A, right? That's the point of contention for closing the Moyo. But black actually doesn't play there. He cuts here. So let's take a look at why. This move would actually lead to a disaster. This is kind of cool. White will Atari, Atari, Atari. Black has two choices now, both which are very bad. If he captures here, that's Atari, and white links everything out. So clearly that is not good for black. If he comes out in this direction, white can connect. Black's going to have to connect, right? White can force and connect, and there's still stuff in this area as well, although black A is probably going to be sente anyway. One more variation, maybe black can try and defend like this, but it doesn't really make any difference. White's going to get connected out, and black's going to have to defend. So black just cuts for now. And so the next move is probably surprising as well. White plays here, and you got to be thinking, what in the world is he doing, right? I mean, he should be breaking in to the Moyo somehow, but he actually can't. So let's take a look at why. These guys, their reading is really quite impressive. So first variation would be to, just Atari and connect, and it looks like white is broken in. However, this is sente, and this is sente, right? Next is the snapback. This is sente. Black can cut. And now black can connect here, and he's looking at saving his cutting stone and also pushing through at B. So that's pretty tough for white, right? He can't just capture at A and have his whole group cut off. So he's going to have to connect around here. This one takes a liberty from black. Black will get another forcing move, and then we'll come out. So that just, it doesn't work, right? White would like to do that, but it doesn't work. And it's pretty involved reading. Doesn't P6 stop Q6? P6 stop Q6. Oh, wow. Peep, huh? When white played. Oh, when I'm confused. Oh, P6? Oh, are you talking about this? Yeah, white's preparing to do to be able to come in. definitely. So, he can do A next for sure. There's actually one more variation though, which is a little more interesting. Instead of this Atari, what if white just comes through, and doesn't help black connect? This one's a little more interesting. Black's going to do these same forcing moves to start with. And maybe he'll try this again. And cut again. It's all like the same sort of plan, except now white will capture. So black's got to try and cut the whole thing. But white can cut here, which aims at playing A next, right? So black has to somehow fix that weakness. He's going to do it like this, so maybe he can get a ko later against white. For example, if black does this, white's going to play here and there's no response. At least three stones are going to die. So black would have to play here, and white can Atari, Atari, and white can actually live here and ruin the center. He would have to maybe deal with a ko on the right side, but black has actually lost more. So that would be pretty bad for black. But the thing is, he can just play here at this point. After white, he can change his mind. White has to connect, and then he can play some other big point, like this one. So that's pretty involved, and it's a lot of reading. It makes you wonder, how long they spent playing this game. But white actually has to back off, and that allows black to seal up here. So it seemed like it was in danger, but actually white couldn't get in anyway. The Moyo is pretty much complete now. So white's gonna make this big exchange that he prepared earlier in the game. It's Gote, but it's really big. Black plays here, which is a pretty interesting move. B would also be really big, but A is a little more active. He's aiming at some follow-up moves like C or D, and he's looking at the connection of this entire white group, right? Um, so since black didn't play B, white tries to come over into this direction. Black plays what looks like a forcing move. It's kind of a probe as well, though. He wants to see if white's just going to connect under on the first line. He actually doesn't, though. He responds over here. He's trying to say that, if you cut me, I can still live with these guys, or maybe I can connect to B. This connection actually might be more dangerous. So let's take a look at why. Black can force and force. And then he's got a really severe move here, which makes Mii of A and B. So if white just connects, black gets to connect here and essentially gets all the points. He flattened the A area and then got to take the B area. Black would have a winning game in that case. So if white wants to play really strong here, he has to descend, but unfortunately his right side group is still weak, right? So we can use forcing moves against those, come back and connect. And now you'll find that you actually can't get these stones to connect. It might look like they should be able to connect, but you can't connect those three stones to the A group. This game is pretty involved compared to the previous ones, don't you think? a lot of reading. So white pushes here, and I want to make sure I don't screw up the tree. Black follows up over here. This is aiming at playing A next, which would be huge, so white responds. Let's take a look at that real quick. For example, that's going to be all Sente, right? So white doesn't want that. Right. So black makes that exchange. He plays here to put pressure on this whole group. This move is also considerable. It's really, really big. Obviously, it's just a big endgame point, but this one puts some pressure on the weak group, right? Black consistently this game has played where the Aji is more so than where just a big Gote move is. So white has to take this point because it's big and also because this A thing isn't alive yet. And now black is going to save his one stone. And white plays an exchange here. Miyamoto said that he thinks this is the losing move. This exchange. And we'll see why. There's a very specific reason why that this exchange is not good. And we'll see that in a second here. Let's see, where next? White's got to live over here, right? Black keeps the shape strong. He's also looking for some follow-up moves. Finally, white connects under. This is Sente for double Atari, right? So white has to connect. Didn't kill S14. Yeah, that invasion by white there was kind of annoying. Are you saying maybe sometime earlier, like here? Okay, yeah, that's an interesting question. Let's try to kill that in a second. Actually, I haven't looked at that. Black plays a nice move here. This is essentially threatening to cut the entire white group off, right? And white has to connect underneath. A, B are Mii at the moment. But this is Sente, right? Because black is covering this cut, so he can disconnect next. So white has to crawl underneath. And this becomes the problem. Now black has a Mii of A and B. He can cut 4 stones off with A. He can disconnect the 2 stones with B. Both are really big. White decides this one is bigger. So black gets to capture these. So let's take a look. If white connects, black can play here. And he can kill these stones. But the only problem is, or rather the only reason black can do this is because of the exchange that white made earlier that we said was a bad exchange. So this exchange, right? A for B. So let's go to here and let's just remove that exchange and try the same move. Now white has a free liberty, so there's nothing black can do. See that? It's pretty complicated, but we can start to see just how important each little exchange is Okay, so that's good for now. Let's go back and try to kill that group. Okay, so how do you want to kill this group? Q14? It definitely looks scary, doesn't it? Okay. Oh, because it's just still alive, right? Yeah. Just play here and it's alive. A, B, me, I. Now, I think it's still an interesting idea, right? Like at this point in the game, that's what we would all be thinking. Yeah, I see what you mean. It does have that false eye looking sort of shape, even though it's a real one. Okay, yeah, so black couldn't kill that group. Um, so finally, black gets to cut these stones off. Um, I think what Commune was saying is that white chose to save the A stones for the end game, and that's absolutely right. He wants to get this. That's why he thought these stones were bigger. Black's going to close that off in Gote. And now we're pretty much in endgame. Um, so let's take a look. Black actually does something pretty interesting here. Clearly this A group is alive, but he creates this little co shape, which allows him to actually put some pressure on the A stones, even though they're going to live. And he wants to jump in the B direction. And so let's just take a look at what happens here. First, white captures. Black's gonna use his threats, right? His Sente moves over here. And he captures. White makes a threat. Black has to respond. White takes the ko. Black's got quite a lot of threats, actually. At this point, white is sort of realizing that isn't he doesn't have enough co-threats, and he really wants to protect this area. So he just answers for now. And like I said, this A group isn't going to die, but black is just putting pressure on it. White takes the ko again. Black's got his ko threat. Takes the ko. Here's a nice ko threat. Black's got ko threats up here on top. Here's another ko threat. Ko threat. And again, white is finding he can't really win this ko. And so he has to fall back to live. It was never a question that white was going to live, but notice how many passive moves black has forced white to play in this area during this ko. So now that white has played so submissively, black just goes and plays a big endgame point. There's actually not much left here in terms of endgame moves. So we'll just take a look at how they play it. Black plays in such a way that A is Atari next, and white doesn't want to let that happen. So He actually gets to do that in Sente, which is nice. Then he gets back to the Ko. White's got a really big threat here. Can't ignore that. Black's got a threat as well. Oh no! I was so close, guys. Why do I just have like this natural inclination to save that stone even though it was a co-threat? Oh man. Why? I was so close. You know the reason I didn't make it is because I basically thought I had made it already. That's when you go wrong, is when you congratulate yourself too early. Yeah. So, of course, white doesn't play here. Okay, well, it's still a new personal best. So that's okay with me. So let's see if I can do the rest of this without any screw ups. N18 better than O17. N18 better than O17. Oh, like you want to play here? It doesn't give extra points, I don't think. But I think that Ocean Sea thinks it gives extra threats, right? One, two. But I think, um, whoops, he's missing that they're actually, it's the same amount of threats because there's a threat here anyway. You see that? So it's really no difference. So there's no reason to throw a stone in there. It's good thinking though. Always, try to play it to get as many co-threats as you can. So now I've completely lost my train of thinking. I don't want to make any more mistakes. Okay, he plays here. Still Sente. Finally, white has to lose this ko for like the third time in a row because that's not Sente. Black threatening to save his stone. White's not going to let him. Oh, I almost missed another exchange. Okay, white pushes in there. Sente. So now black gets Sente. Just a couple of 1-point moves here. And so that was the end of the game, actually, or at least the end of the Kifu. We can see that there's no way for black to make this into a point because A and B are Miai for white. White's going to get C, and white's going to have to play a move at D. And black wins the game by 5 points. Um, again, with no Komi. But I thought it was pretty impressive how he handled the center, right? He committed to it quite early, which looks pretty questionable. But the way he actually handled it was completely natural, right? Nothing was forced. 5 points. No Komi, right? So some people would be tempted to call it, like a half a point loss or a 1.5 point loss, but you can't really say that, right? Because if there was Komi, Shusaku's going to play differently. Um, the book also pointed out something interesting was that since this was the first even game, in the past when Ota Yuzo is playing with Shusaku, there's a certain amicable atmosphere of instruction. That's how they put it in the book. Um, but once it got to an even game, White probably wanted to show that, hey, you're not on my level. And so it's reasonable to think that White was probably playing at full strength here. So this losing move was actually a really big deal. Um, so Miyamoto had a suggestion for how White should play instead to still have a chance to win. If White just connects up here, actually this one's long and involved, so I'm just going to look in the book. That's right, okay. So he thinks Black will start this code thing right away, and White will defend. And Black can try to play this move here, Peep. He can get this in Sente. He can get this in Sente. Essentially, this was how, the 9-Dan professional felt that the end game would go. Um, this is actually sets up a losing game for White anyway. So that means that connecting at A is not good enough. So White needs to try something more severe to have a chance. So what's the move White can try here in this shape? Be a last little go problem before we wrap up. S7. Um, S7 will work, but it's not the main move. S9, right. Yeah, you can actually just go straight for the throat here. And A, B, Mii, right? So Black is definitely not going to play here because then A makes no sense. So this would be a code that maybe White would have a chance to win the game. And that was Miyamoto's idea. Um, after playing this exchange, Black was gonna get to kill the C stones or the D or the A stones. So he thinks that the game had been lost at that point already. All right, guys, that was it. The games in general are gonna start being more involved like this. I'm hoping that everyone can still get something out of it. Whether you're like a double-digit Q or a Dom player or single-digit Q. I know that this one demanded a lot more thinking, right? I know for me it was a lot more difficult, but hopefully it was interesting and you can get an idea of just how crazy their reading was. Okay, cool. Well, thanks a lot, guys, and I'll catch you next week.